The Speaker is one of the newest members of the Silverfang clan, an international hunters lodge with hundreds of members around the world, all from different walks of life, founded centuries ago under a very different name as a group of knights. As the world changed, so did the knights, and they spread worldwide, spreading their ideals around the world and strengthening it with new ideas, new weapons, new technology, new knowledge, and new people. Now, the Order of Knights is a hunter's lodge, and the only thing every single member of the Silverfang clan have in common, they are all monsters in some regard. A lot of the members could never pass as human in exoteric society without glamour or a disguise of some kind. Other members could pass as perfectly human, yet they still chose to live among the monsters, either because they want to be protectors, because they are more accepted among monsters than among men. And then there are those, like the Speaker, who are cursed to be a monster. Curses can be incurred, curses can be earned, curses can be inherited, or they can just occur seemingly out of nowhere. For the Speaker, Catrin Blaidd, named Silverwolf, her curse was inherited, incurred, and earned. One of the descendants of Rhosyn Blaidd, the Rose Wolf from her mother's side, her story that she shared is one from her teen years. Since the time of Rhosyn Blaidd, there was a rite of passage in Catrin's family. When they turn 15, they are supposed to spend an entire night in the nearby forest and survive. While that seems simple at first, there are a few rules. The first rule is that the children could not use their gift from Rhosyn to survive. They would have to survive entirely human, or they'd never survive at all. They also couldn't use any weapons except for a single knife made out of steel, a sharp and dependable tool, but useless against the final rule of the night. The final rule, Catrin's mother, Lupa, would be hunting down her children that night, in her wolf form. The children would have an hour head start to hide from their mother, but if Lupa found them, she would eat her children. Unworthy to carry on the bloodline, they would serve as Lupa's dinner. When Catrin was born, she had 12 older siblings. By the time Catrin turned 15, she had no siblings left. My preparation for my rite of passage was intense. For years leading up to it, my father, Arthur, would take us camping and teach us all he could. He taught us how to make traps, how to stay downwind of dangerous predators, how to make a fire no matter the weather, and even how to cover our scent, all in desperate attempts to help us survive Lupa. Year after year, we watched as the tactics we all learned were not helpful in our rite of passage. Karis tried to hide in the trees, thinking that wolves couldn't climb the trees. She was the best climber in the family, even faster than Lupa in her human form, even able to leap tree to tree without falling. Her body was found strewn across 3 different trees, and she didn't die until the next evening, when Dad had to remove her heart from a trunk. Gawain tried to creating spikes to slow down Lupa or even kill her. Despite not having any weapons other than the knife, he spent his hour head start carving wooden spikes and smearing it with a paste made from wolfsbane. Then he hid in a cave, using the spikes at the entrance so she wouldn't be able to pass without poisoning herself. He was found with his still screaming head on a spike, his lungs and heart exposed to air slowly collapsing. He died of the poison before he died of blood loss. And the other deaths got even worse from there. Whether my siblings tried to run, hide, fight, or tried some mixture of all of them, Lupa would find them, and Lupa would eat them. and it was so much harder to deal with when Lupa tried being a mother to us all. In her human form, she acted compassionate, even gentle towards us. She was the mother who would stay up late to help with a science fair project, or she would make sure that we had our favorite meals. She would always have kind words for everyone, and all of the children in the neighborhood would wish she was their mother because she baked the best sweets. Yet every full moon night the monster would take over, and she would truly reveal her chosen name, Lupa. She would stalk the streets and forests of Colne, killing indiscriminately. Anyone who was out during those full moon nights was considered already lost, because even if no one knew who the werewolf of Colne was, they knew the wolf was real. When she described it, she would describe it as a monster taking over her body, that she had no control, no memories of what she did. She just killed, and she woke up the next day with no knowledge of what happened. Yet, I had my doubts for years that she truly didn't remember anything. My logic when I was young is she didn't know what she was doing. Why would she even know she was transforming? And as I grew older and my eldest sibling died in the first rite of passage, they went from doubts to certainty that she was well aware of what was happening. After the first death in the family, Dad no longer slept in the same room as Mom, and I found her photo collection. She had a photo album hidden in the pantry behind Flour. When I saw the photo album, I opened it and I saw what Lupa was collecting and protecting from us. She had collected the obituaries of everyone who had died to the Wolf of Colne, and next to each obituary was a photo taken of each death. Not a crime scene photo, nothing that professional, but a shaky Polaroid picture. I flipped through the album and found obituaries and photos going as far back as 2715. As I flipped towards the back of the album, I saw that she also took a picture of Karis's body. Lupa took a photo of Karis after she tore her daughter's body apart, taking a picture of her handiwork. A monster who isn't in control of her actions doesn't do that. Someone who doesn't control what they do at night doesn't collect trophies of their crimes during the day. Only someone who is fully aware of their actions and proud of their actions would do something like that. And when I read the memoirs of Rhosyn Blaidd, I became even more certain that Lupa was in charge of her actions. Even if my siblings didn't believe me, it was enough to let me know I lived with a monster. And as time went on and I lost more siblings, it got worse. When they died, Lupa wasted no time removing every photo of them in the house, except the photo she kept in her album, hiding it away, saying that since they didn't make it, they weren't part of the family anymore. Our once full and loving house became empty and cold. The authorities assumed my siblings were just victims of the werewolf of Colne. In a way, they were right. I remember the first time I tried telling a teacher. They told me I should keep writing stories. They even called in my father to tell him. I never tried telling anyone else about Lupa after that. I told my father about the album I saw after he was called into school for me telling stories about my mother, and he tried many different things to try and make it easier for his children to survive. My father spent years trying to find a way to make it all stop. He tried teaching us how to survive, hoping that some of us would make it. He tried learning more about werewolves, hoping to find a weakness. He tried to find something, anything to save his children. something other than killing his wife. He tried finding a cure for this strain of lycanthropy, wolfsbane in her coffee, silver in her food, prayers to Artemis, all in an attempt to keep her from becoming a monster. Maybe those might work against other strains of lycanthropy, but it did not work on Lupa. She was born a werewolf from a family that was all born werewolves, from a bloodline that went back at least millennia, if not even longer. It was a genetic curse, not one that was cast upon any individual person, so it would take a far stronger power to undo it. I think he only stayed to try and save us. I'm not certain he still loved his wife after everything. So, after Gaiwin's death, I was the last one of the children left, and father, in a desperate bid, made his way to Mermaid Bay in Vinland to get a possible cure. While he was gone, it felt like things got so much worse between my mother and I. Her words were still kind, but they also felt predatory, like she was already planning her next meal. "You're going to be a woman soon. I wish you'd just stay my little girl forever," she said when we were out buying my first real bra. I am sure lots of mothers say similar things to their daughters when they are shopping for bras, but it felt sinister from her context. Or in the weeks leading up to my birthday, and I asked her if we could get myself some new boots, since my old boots were getting worn down. She only glanced my way and then she said, "Well, I'd be more comfortable getting you new boots after your birthday. The last thing we want to do is buy you something so expensive, and then it turns out you didn't need them at all," which was one of the first times she implied I wasn't going to survive my rite of passage. Only a month before my birthday, my dad came back and things seemed a little better. We went camping again, just me and him. Lupa never bothered camping with her children. There, when cat camping, he also tried to teach me shooting. I don't know why he bothered teaching me when we weren't allowed to use a gun. However, it was still helpful and I got pretty decent. And the day of my birthday, everything came together. Mother acted like it was any other day. She made breakfast of eggs, bacon, and potatoes. When I asked about my presents, she waved it off. "After your rite of passage, we can get presents," she said. It was different from when my siblings had their rite of passage. They usually got a present of some kind, a journal, a camera, a stuffed animal, or even stickers. Yet, here I was, the last one. I would only get presents after the rite of passage. The unsaid part was only if I survived. We continued our day. My dad got me new boots, and I went over my supplies in my pack again. I had a rope, a water bottle, some protein bars, a sleeping bag, and my knife. And with just an hour before sunset, I hugged my father, and he hugged me back as he whispered something to me. "When she gets close, look in your pack," he said as I let him go and I began to make my way into the woods. When I turned back, my father looked worried, and Lupa was smiling in a way I never saw her smile before, like a predator looking at their prey. I ran into the forest, heading deeper and deeper. My goal was to get past the river, thinking maybe the water would help keep her away from me. Still, as I made it further into the woods, it got eerily quiet. Too quiet, too quickly. I stopped in my tracks and I listened to the woods. It would take a very large predator to make an entire ecosystem go quiet. I glanced at my watch. It had barely been 10 minutes. I don't think it could have been Lupa then. That didn't mean I wasn't in danger, though. There were bears and regular wolves in the woods as well. So I remained frozen until I could see the creature that was making the woods so quiet. From behind the tree stepped something I was not expecting to see. It was about the size of a deer. It stepped like a deer, and the body resembled a deer, albeit more fluffy. The head of the creature resembled a rabbit, if rabbits had antlers growing from their heads and fangs from their lips. And it had wings on the side of its body. The winged deer rabbit glanced towards me before bounding off into the forest. A few moments later, the forest noises returned to normal. That was very strange. I had never seen nor heard of a creature like that before. So I continued to make my way into the forest, away from where the strange creature was bounding towards. Then I made it to the river. The sun was almost completely down, and I knew that Lupa was moments away from beginning her hunt. So I crossed the rocks on the river to make it across before night hid the way across. The water was at least a meter deep, and it flowed quickly enough that it should push Lupa off her feet. I hoped, at least. I made it deeper into the woods, making my way to an isolated place in the forest where I hoped I could be safe. The moment the sun went down, I heard a howl through the forest. A howl so strong that it echoed around me, deep inside of my bones. A howl that made me feel like prey. I knew I wasn't going to outrun her. All I could think to do now was try to hide in a small cave I knew about nearby. She didn't know about it, and hopefully the mint growing over the entrance would cover my scent. But that howl? It told every cell of my body that I was already dead as I ran through the silent forest to the cave. Crawling my way forward, I pressed my back to the cave wall, looking out into the forest. The woods and the cave were silent. I could only hear my heart in my ears while I let the chill of the cave fill me and slowly calm me down. I was in a place she didn't know about. I was in a place she couldn't smell me, and she couldn't even reach me. There was only one entrance, and I was watching it. I left my heart and my anxiety both ease as I finally explored my backpack to feel what my dad left me. Maybe he left me a book of matches or a flashlight, maybe a note or letter explaining something. What I felt when I put my hand inside the bag was familiar, cool metal. My heart dropped when I felt it, and I realized what my father gave me. It was a pistol in my bag. Judging by how it felt, it was the same kind of pistol I used at the shooting range. A revolver with about 2 bullets inside, judging by the weight. At first I was wondering why my father would give me something that violated the rules of the rite of passage. When I heard something crunching twigs and leaves outside of the cave. Something very big, as it grew closer and closer. So I aimed my pistol at the mouth of the cave as I carefully listened and watched. What I didn't expect to hear was my mother's voice. "Sweet Catrin, where are you? Come out where your mother can see you," I heard her say, in a voice that echoed across the forest. I remained still, willing my heart to slow down so she couldn't hear it. She didn't seem to hear it, but I could hear movement near the cave. "Why are you hiding, Catrin?" Do you really believe I would hurt you? I would never hurt you, I heard her call out, this time a little more distant from where I was. I don't know why she thought this would work. Your siblings are fine. They all live in the forest now. They live happier lives than they did in the city. Your father is there too, and your grandmother, and your great-grandparents. Don't you want to meet them? She called out, her voice difficult to hear with how far she was. Did she use these honeyed words on my siblings? Did it work on them? They didn't get a chance to read Rhosyn Blaidd's memoirs, so there was no way they could know about what I know now. None of Lupa's children could turn, not because we didn't carry the gene, but because there was something you had to do before you could transform. Something that Lupa did before she turned 15. Something that gave her the advantage she needed to kill her own mother. The ability to transform into a werewolf was only triggered after you kill someone. A leftover part of the curse that dated all the way back to the era of King Lycaon, when he killed his own son and offered the flesh in sacrifice to Zeus. He was cursed to become a werewolf. Now the curse continued. It still needed to be triggered by murder, so sometimes the curse would go generations or even centuries without being discovered. However, the curse remained. Salupa could only become a werewolf through one way. She would have had to commit murder to turn into a werewolf, and now she has committed murder again and again. Now here I was hiding from her. Still, I remained resolute. I just had to wait for sunrise, and then I would be safe from her. She could only turn at night, and the full moon forces her to change whether she wants to or not. By dawn's purifying light would force her back to human form, and I would finally be free from this danger. I would be a woman. I told myself that as the hours slowly crawled by. Sometimes I would hear Lupa sniffing near the cave. Sometimes I would hear her seemingly kilometers away, and occasionally I would hear nothing at all. By the time I thought I was going to make it, when the first gray light of the coming sun came, I heard Lupa get very close to the cave. Her sniffing, scratching, and crunching were getting louder, and I could hear her voice again. She was no longer trying to be sweet. Little Catrin, I cannot wait to find you. I bet your bones taste the sweetest. I bet your marrow will fill my heart. I bet your blood is spicy, and I bet your brain is savory. I bet you will taste like your father. It felt like my heart stopped at that line. Did she kill him? I could hear her chuckling, like she could hear my thoughts, as she scraped closer to the cave, still out of sight. Do you know why I took my time with your siblings? This is the only way to live. My humanity is a burden. I am only ever free as a wolf. I am only ever alive when I am killing. Those I kill during the rest of the year are barely appetizers. My children, oh my, those are the main course. Watching people prepare to fight against me, to take every precaution only to fail every time? Do you really think your father was the first man I married? Do you really think this family is the first I've wiped out? No, you're just the last morsel I have before I move on somewhere else. I have killed thousands before, and I will kill thousands more. You could have died quickly, but you insisted on hiding, so I hope you at least fight back. The meat tastes better when it's a fight, I heard her say as her head appeared at the entrance of the cave. Her face was more lupine than human, a long white snout with gray fur. Her eyes were red and practically glowing in the low light. Her ears were wolf-like and flat against her skull, showing she was enraged. Her arms were muscular and ended in claw-like fingers that dug gouges into the stone. I could hear the cold scraping of claw across the stone as she dragged herself closer, and I lifted up the gun, aiming it directly at her face. As I aimed it, she only said one thing. "You'll never be a woman," she said as the gunshot rang through the cave, nearly deafening me as the bullet entered Lupa's skull and exited into the cave wall behind her, leaving sparks, blood, and brain matter on the wall. She slumped forward, her death rattle left her mouth, and as her blood slowly ebbed out of her head, she began to change back. Her fur receded, revealing her bare skin beneath. Her wound closed and she grew smaller, as she was no longer the gray werewolf she was just a moment ago. She was now a familiar person, my own mother, except her hair looked grayer and her skin had more wrinkles than I remembered. When she was fully human again, her eyes cracked open, her wound healed, a bullet behind her as she reached out for me. "Catrin, help me. The curse is lifted. I no longer feel the bloodlust," she said as she continued to crawl towards me. I thought for a moment of letting her get close, to give her another chance. Then I saw her smile. Even now, while she was begging me for help, she still had her predatory smile on her face. Then I had a thought. If killing the wolf made her revert back to human, did that mean she would just need to kill again to get the wolf form back? How many of my siblings did manage to kill the wolf, only to spare the woman and be killed by her? How many people made the mistake of thinking only the wolf was dangerous? How many people died to the woman because they were watching the wolf? I felt something deep inside of myself. It was like everything was clicking together. I decided enough was enough. She killed so many, and she would just keep killing. She depended on the mercy of others, so I aimed the gun at her head. She stopped. "Catrin, stop. I'm your mother. You can't treat me like this," she croaked as I pulled back the hammer on the revolver, keeping it aimed at her head. Even with her hand raised up, I could see her smile on her face as she tried to block my aim with her hand. "How many people died?" I asked her. "I don't know. The wolf killed them all. I wasn't in control," she said meekly. I shook my head as my heart and voice both hardened. "I know you were in control. You kept those pictures. How many albums of your murders are you keeping?" I asked, and she stopped pretending. "Hundreds. Literally hundreds. Each one full of hundreds of prey. You think you're any different, little pup?" she said in the same voice she had been trying to tempt me out of the cave. How many times did my siblings manage to kill the wolf, only to be killed by you as their mother? I asked her, and I could hear her chuckle. I can see you have been reading those memoirs, but to answer your question, all of them. All of them killed the wolf. Some got lucky, others got clever, others overpowered me, and others still survived until sunrise. They saw the wolf gone, so they thought the woman was safe. Every single time. They trust the woman, but not you. Why not you? She asked with curiosity in her eyes, while I kept the gun aimed at her, and she seemed to recognize something in me that I didn't. You think you're special? You think you'll just slay the monster and go home? I am the only family you have left. Your siblings are dead. Your father is dead. Even if you report me to the police, they will link the bullet to you. Do you think you're Electra, little Catrin? Going to slay your mother to avenge your father? No, no. You're not Electra. You're Iphengia. Now be a good little dear and die for me, she said as she kept crawling towards me. I yelled at her to stop. I told her I would shoot her if she continued. Tears in my eyes as she crawled up my body and she wrapped her fingers around my neck. Her breath in my face, not even bothering to try and disarm me. You'd never shoot me. You're the weakest of all of my children. Someone who would try and be a hero if I let you live. The world needs less heroes, I heard her whisper while she strangled me. My mother's fingers around my neck, and I struggled to breathe. I made a choice. In that moment, either I would die, and many others would die, or I would live, and I would prevent many other deaths. All I had to do was kill her. I lifted the gun up to her heart, and I pulled the trigger. There was another loud bang that felt less loud than the last one. This one was a lot bloodier, with the blood and viscera of my mother coating me, as she gasped out her last breath, and she collapsed, now completely dead. My throat free from her strangulation, I took long, desperate breaths, and my heart pounded as I finally stood, and I let out a scream. Years of fear, years of anger, years of pent-up emotions I did not even have a name for, now gone. The danger to my life and to everything I wanted to be was now gone and would never bother me again. As I made my way out of the cave, I noticed both bullets embedded in the wall. One was silver, the second was lead. As I stepped out into dawn's purifying light, I took a frigid breath as I hiked home, hoping Lupa was lying. She wasn't lying. Catrin told us about how she had to pick up the pieces of her life after that. She told us the part of the story that is almost never told is the story about cleaning up after a monster attack. Her dad was dead and she had to call the police and tell them what happened. While at first they didn't believe that she actually killed the werewolf of Colm, they did, however, believe that the death was in self-defense. So thankfully she avoided prison time. They did, however, believe she killed the werewolf of Colm during the next moon, when there was a full moon and no deaths. And there were no deaths after the next full moon, nor the full moon after that. By that point, everyone in Colm knew her name and knew her as the savior of Gothia Civitas. It didn't help the fact, though, she was now another member of Iphengia's children, another orphan from the monsters of the world. Even if she saved countless children, She was not able to save her own family. What she also learned during the next full moon was how to master the form of the wolf. She learned her strengths and weaknesses. She learned how strong she was. She learned how fast she was. And she even learned how to change form at night. However, she could not find a way to keep herself from changing during the nights of the full moon. Even cloudy nights still turned her. Even if she couldn't see the moon, she still changed. She also learned in her wolf form she had full control. There was no wolf instinct. There was no dark hunger. There was no competing force. No other hand on the wheel except her own. She didn't feel a desire to hurt people. She was still the same person even when she changed. She could still understand everyone around her, and she could still communicate with everyone around her. So her curse was little more than an inconvenience to her, and it was a gift to many others. It allowed her to harm those who harm others. Her curse became a curse for others. When she turned 18, she joined the Silverfang clan, where she has been an invaluable member ever since. She has helped many other people, both monster and human, escape dangerous situations, but the lesson she wanted all of her listeners to retain she saves for this point. The world is full of monsters that look harmless, and those monsters are far more dangerous than those that are obviously monster. Don't ignore the women because you're too busy looking for the wolf. You may miss her sharp teeth,